the rules in a very coherent fashion. And I would like to encourage you all, if you have questions, please keep your mute on and write the questions in the chat area. And if the questions get to be very detailed and you want to have a dialogue, or it becomes more complex than we need, we will unmute you and you can interact with Rick. But if we all stay muted, then the sound will be clean and clear. So again, I want to thank you for joining this program. And now I'll turn it on to Sensei Rick Salato to explain the 2022 rule changes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bregman. And I appreciate all of you being here this evening. We have a lot to cover in the short time that we'll be on. And this is some of you probably been through a couple of these things because the rules have been out for a couple of months. However, all they were was like a 21-minute video, which we'll go over. And then also they finally added the video on the gestures, the new gestures they'll accept. And there's also something that just came out within the last week, or that I had access to, which I will make available to some of you, the ones that are on, especially national referees, since I have most of the emails, that I was sent the contact for the Lisbon, the 2022 European Judo Union Lisbon seminar for referees and coaches. I found that it's 8 hours the first day and about 3 or 4 hours the second day. Of course, for those who've seen them in the past, somewhat of a chunk of that's lunch and breaks. So, however, I found it very enlightening, the parts I did go over. The original releases on the paper and the video do not do the changes justice. So if you get a chance after this to go to the link, you could even go to YouTube and put in the 2022 IGF rule changes Lisbon, and you should end up with the with those two YouTube tapes. Very enlightening. The other thing you may be aware of or not, that the IGF has just released the 2022 SOR. We've been using the 2020 version up to now, and now they've finally put together the final. It was released on March 9th, I believe, 2022, and it's available at the IGF website. So let us begin. Some of you have seen this video probably ad nauseum, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Ken to play it, and we're going to stop it at points and try to clarify what's going on, and use some of the examples that the Lisbon clinic provided. And also, if there are any other A referees on that have had later incidents or been over to Europe within the last 2 months, have a better understanding of what they're trying to get across, then you can surely just chat in, and then we'll let you on so you can explain it a little better. If any of you, as said, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to you. Ken, if you would start off with the IGF video and try to skip to 6 minutes, 11 seconds. Oh, you've done it. I hope everybody can. We have no, I'm not getting audio. Ken, can you hear? Ken, your mic is off.
Try this. Let's try this right here.
Decision
All right.
1. Scoring for actions that without stopping are a continuation of techniques. If there is a stop in the action, there is no score. In this example, it's a continuation of the same movement that gets the score. From a different angle, the Seoinage drives and continues driving all the way through. Score. Once again, a continuous movement driving all the time off the back legs. Score. And again, driving off the back leg, no break in the movement, a good score with no break in the action. Here we see a clear stop in the action and then a second drive. No score. From a different angle, notice the stop, then the second action. No score. Clear stop in the action there with the Seoinage and a second action, so no score given. There's the stop in the action, and there is the second drive. No score. Once again, two different actions and no score given. Notice how the first one stops and then starts again. No score. Once again, a good example of stopping the action and then driving off the ground. There's the first action, and then the second action to take her opponent over. So no score. Decision 2.
We hold it here, Ken. All right, let's, can everybody, if someone cannot hear me, then chat into Ken that you cannot hear me. On the first decision, I believe there's not much of a real change from last year and the year before. The big thing you must be aware of is that where there can be continuous action, you must understand that sometimes the speed of that action can be slowed down by Uke's defense. But as long as the Tory is driving, as Neil Adams says, by driving with the legs, and you see the Tory using his hands and is making effort to make the throw, as long as there's always forward movement or positive movement, then that's all one action. Once that action ceases, and then it may continue momentarily after that, that's a break in the action, and that score cannot be counted. So there's no big thing about this. I don't see a change that's significant. It does help a bit, though, that they just clarified a little clearer as to what continuity is, or the continuous action. Let's move on to decision 2.
Criteria comprises landing on the whole side of the body at 90 degrees or more to the rear, or on one shoulder and upper back. A score will be given for a whole side of the body landing even when the elbow is out. Hip and shoulder position must be considered. Notice the 90-degree angle of the landing to score a Wazari. He lands on his side at 90 degrees. This is a great example of Tory driving, and at this stage here, 90 degrees is reached and Wazari scored. Different angle, There's the drive, and there is the score. This Sumigaeshi, as you can see, at this point here, perfect 90 degrees landing and gets the score. Here it is from another angle, and again, 90 degrees, landing and score. This time, Koji Gary, and just lands at the 90-degree angle to gain the score. At the moment of impact, 90-degree landing before she turns onto her front and score. This landing beyond the 90 degrees, landing on the front, so no score. Whether the arm is out or in doesn't make any difference because it's more towards the front, which means no score. In this example, this point here, you can see that the opponent is more on their front and that the 90-degree angle hasn't been achieved. Here we see it from a different angle. The elbow is out and clearly on the front. No score. And for this example, you can see that the 90-degree angle is not quite achieved. It's more on the front, so no score given. Different angle, we can see it. Doesn't quite reach the criteria. No score.
Okay, can we hold it up, Ken? All right, now, this, initially when I saw this, I didn't think there was much of a change. But after watching the Lisbon clinic, there is, for me, a big change. And that is that prior in 2021, if someone were thrown and their shoulders were 90 degrees and their hip was negative 90, that would be Wazari. Now, if you remember what Neil Adams said, was the whole length of the body from the shoulders to the hips have to be 90 degrees. So both the hips and the shoulders together must be at 90 degrees at some time when they impact. That's a change. Ken, can you bail out of this one and go to Lisbon, the first one, 18?
Yeah. One question before in the chat room, Rick.
Oh, yeah.
On the last one, they gave a score, so that was old, correct?
Yes. Right. Some of the examples they provided in the IGF video, if they showed them at the Lisbon clinic, they would have given a different answer.
Decision 3. Wazari criteria.
Yeah, cut that out. Hold that there because we got to come back to that. But you would just, this is 18.
18.
Okay, people, listen to the comments by the IJF committee, the EJU commission, but also at that commission was Daniel Laskow, one of the IJF head referees. Okay, go ahead.
It's still the same. Wait a little bit. Okay, Malik, please.
We just everybody say yes. I have to. Don't watch them. Don't watch them. Don't watch them.
Okay, please, can you give your opinion now?
No score.
No score? Okay, again, it's important to watch the impact. In the other camera?
That's not a good shot from that side. We don't see a good view. This is much better.
No.
Mark, stop it here.
So you see especially the hip here, you can see very well that the hip does not have the 90-degree criteria. So we agree with you, no score. Thank you very much.
All right, this, oops. You notice how White did land. One thing you'll notice that it hurts me a bit as far as old style judo is the lower end of what they're calling Wazari wasn't Wazari in the old days. It's it's remnants from the Yuko. And but the other thing you have to look at, these players are so fast, sometimes they land on the side as soon as they hit and they snap right to their front. So sometimes people with the slower eyes think they landed on their front. That's why they make a big deal about the care system and being able to go over it as quickly as possible to see that in fact that white player here, his shoulders were at 90 at impact, but the hips were negative 90. And therefore, last year, this would have been Wazari. This year, no Wazari. Okay, continue the video, please.
Give it
Dan.
you, no score. Thank you very much.
Rahimli Natik, prepare Pator Walter from Belgium.
Okay, wait.
All right, this next video is 19.
Yes, please.
I think this is landing the 90 degree, hip and shoulder 90 degree. Yes,
For you, it's 90 degrees.
this is score.
Okay, other opinions? Who say no? Who say no score? Some people don't agree with you, Martin. We watch the impact again. Actually, this is not 90 degrees.
The hip, yes, but not the shoulders. The hip, yes, but not the shoulders. Huh?
So not the full line, is 90 degrees. This is important. The hip as well as the shoulder. Can you accept, Martin?
I understand.
Okay, thank you. You watch one time more.
Can you pause it, Ken?
Well, good to see that the
All right. Again, you see in that, the hips were at 90 and the shoulders were negative 90, therefore it can't score. Does everybody understand that change? The other thing too is this hip and shoulder, this was a thing that happened at the Lisbon clinic. They were confusing is the hip and shoulder deal is more for side landings, going out sideways. If you go over the top, like Seiwe Nage, any kind of over the head to Harai Goshi, the hips don't have to hit. If the back hits, some part of the real back, or in your mind, what I recommend you do is like players that have the back patch on. If any part of that back patch impacts the mat, then that's definitely a Wazari or higher. These side landing things, none of the back patch hits. But if the back patch hits, and even if it hits so much that the letters of the country, the 3-letter code for the country, one of those letters touches the ground, you can ignore the hip shoulder landing deal. Because now it's it's a higher, a middle level Wazari or higher, depending on how they roll them over the back, what parts of the back hit the mat. Does everybody understand what I just said? Please, if it's a side landing where no back patch, no actual back touches the mat, you have to use the hip and the shoulder when they hit together and they're both at 90, then you can call a Wazari. If either one is negative, then you cannot call a Wazari. However, if the player's thrown even sideways, but you plant some of the back patch or the real back to the mat for a Wazari or Ipan, in that case, the hip factor isn't taken into account because it's a better throw. It's a higher level throw. It's a little more up on the scale of the spectrum of Wazari. The side landings are at the low end of the spectrum, and the partial back landing of back patches in in the middle region of what a Wazari should be. So if everybody understands that, you'll do okay in interpreting these kind of situations. Okay. Let's continue, Ken.
Okay,
The upper body has not the 90 degrees, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Patur Walter.
Now we're gonna watch number 20. Now, we had a good view on that one. And we
Walter?
had a blocked view on that one.
Not 90 degrees, so no score for me.
Okay. We look at the impact. Stop. Walter, you have another opportunity?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Again, cases like this, technology is essential.
Freeze it. All right, everybody saw on that one, it was 90 degrees on the hips and 90 degrees on the shoulders, and therefore the EJU and the IGF wants that to be called the Wazari. I hope everybody saw that. All right, number 25. Ken.
okay.
Not a good view because our Tory blocked our view. The referee had a much better view of that. Now we should get the better view.
Go, please.
Yes, for my opinion, it's score.
Scored. Okay. Who's in favor of score? Please raise your hands. Who gives no score? I think more no scores. Eh? I think we agree with the more no scores. Analysis. Our opinion is that the hip from the blue one does not touch. So there has to be an impact. If the impact is not there, even if we speak about 90 degrees, it cannot be a score. The full line from the shoulder, from the upper body until the hip never touches.
All right, you heard Daniel Lascaux that if Tory does uranage, where the arm is around the back like that, and he throws the player down and his arm's in the way, blocking the hip from touching, you can't score, especially if it's a 90 degree on the side thing. So where the shoulders may be 90 and the hips are face up, so they're 92, but they never hit the ground in this case because Tory's arm's in the way. So if this kind of thing happens to you, you know, at least this month, not to call it. They might change their minds down the road, and that's possible, but I think they should stay pretty even with this throughout. So if the arm does block the landing, and you notice you can see white all the way through, the hip never touches. So therefore, this cannot score. Are there any questions on this decision too? Just remember the change is that on a side landing, the hip and the shoulder must be at 90 degrees in order to call Wazari. All right, Ken, let's go back to decision 3.
Comprises landing on the whole side of the body at 90 degrees or more to the rear or on one shoulder and upper back. A score will be given for a whole side body landing even when the elbow is out. Once the shoulder and upper part of the back make contact, then a score will be given.
Could you freeze it?
An example, the shoulder.
Okay. All right. In the example there, the player didn't even make the legs over. As long as real back touches, the back patch back or in the back, on the back there, then you can forget about the hips. And that's a score right there, that dojo demonstration. In this case, you notice the corner of the back patch is touching. That isn't a side landing, that's a real back landing. And therefore, at least at this point, it's definitely Wazari. Okay, continue, please.
And upper back make contact with the mat. So it gets a clear score. Decision 4. Landing simultaneously on two elbows or hands towards the back is Wazari for Tori and Shido for Uki. When two elbows touch at the same time, it's Shido and a score. When both hands touch the floor at the same time, again, Shido and a score, Wazari given. And of course, when one elbow and one hand touch the floor, once again, it's Wazari given and a Shido. Competition example shows the landing, both hands together and Wazari given. Now it will be a Wazari and a Shido. From a different angle, and again, both hands, Wazari and Shido. The second example here, both hands land together, definite score, but now Shido as well. And for this final example, once again, two hands down, Wazari and Shido given.
Okay, freeze it. All right. Can we check on the chats? I saw some chats go by, but they went too quickly for me to see what was
Yeah, I
said.
think Nikki had her hand up.
All right.
So I want to ask a question in regards to that specific thing. So I understand the Wazari, that's not a problem. Would you at that point give a flying Shido on it? Or would you just allow the action to continue until, I'm just asking what the appropriate sequence of events to go with that.
I'll go over that, Mickey.
Thank you. And I'll also, what's the signal for that one again?
We'll show you the videotape on that a little later on.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
Right.
No problem. The
we-
hand signal will show that. IJF made a little 2-minute video. Now, as far as the elbows back, before we get into when to give the Shido, it is understood that the word that is used by the IJF or had been initially was if both hands went down simultaneously, or both elbows went down simultaneously, or if one hand and one elbow went down simultaneously. The problem is in the English, simultaneously means at the same time. There are cases where you will see the player put down one hand, and then as they're rolled, they put down the other hand. It's what happened was within the last year, finally, Mr. Barcos started using the word consecutively. And it's basically what the IJF was trying to say. Simultaneously not only means both hands at the same time, but it also means with one hand hits, and then within a few, fraction of a second or a second, the other hand hits, and both hands are being used to keep the player up, so preventing their back from getting the Wazari. In that case, one hand, two hand, it's still the same as a simultaneous landing of the hands. And of course, we are to give the Wazari on that. I hope that's one clarification I wanted to bring up. Now let's talk about the timing of Shido, because I don't know if they covered it in the Lisbon clinic, because I didn't get that far yet. I didn't finish looking at it. But we do know, I will say this, that if the player does the elbow break, and then for some reason, they just get up and break at that point, for whatever reason, no one takes advantage. And then you call mate, then that's easy. You just, because only 5 to 10 seconds will have elapsed, and there won't be any confusion if you give that guy the gesture, stepping back and putting both elbows behind you, and then indicating the player with Shido for that particular penalty. However, in cases where a player may take advantage, now obviously in this case, the person who puts their elbows down can't take advantage because he's doing a negative action. However, if the player that did the Ouchigari that forced him backwards, and I did see a question about right now, I believe that particular elbow thing is general. No, it can be. I could see it happening forward too. But in most instances we see it, it's doing a back throw. The throw's being thrown to the back. However, I can see some throws that they may tie a tosh or whatever, where the hands can be put out to keep the back up. And in those cases, that penalty can be given in those cases. But what we need to be sure about is if the Tory does take an advantage to climb up the player and try to get an osaikomi or something, when do you do not, from what I understand from several referees, that you're not to give it on the run. That means while action is continuing or on the fly, some people call it. You're not supposed to do it that way. The wording was, and this is not from IJF, but from some IJFA referee, US IJF referees that have been on the circuit, that you give the Shido at the next available natural break in the action. Very politically correct, I guess, or so when there's a natural break in the action, you can give the Shido. My question to them was, what happens if that natural breaks like 30 seconds later? It's awkward then. You're giving a Shido. Once you have a break, you mate, and then, everybody's attention span has moved on, and all of a sudden you give a Shido, and everybody, what was that? That can happen. I've seen that happen. Maybe not at IJF, but at local and regional events, something like that can happen. So just please go ahead.
To clarify, I find it a little confusing. When is the mate called and when is the Shido called?
All right, the mate, if the player throws with this particular, like an ojigari, and throws the back, if the uke puts their elbows back or their hands back to prevent their back from landing, the referees have been told to call wazari anyways, because by doing that action, you can possibly cause a separation of the shoulder with the bone. When they hit hard, the bones come up from the humerus all through the, from the radius and the ulna up through the humerus, up through the shoulder, and pop, you have an acromioclavicular dislocation or pop the shoulder. So you don't, we want to prevent that kind of action from occurring. So we're going to give the Tory a wazari for that action. If the player, the Tory, decides to stop the action at that point, and then the judo is neutral or there's no progress, then mate is appropriate right then. Then the players will stand up, go to their positions, and at that point the referee will demonstrate the penalty and then point to the player and say Shido, the one that did the elbow thing. So that's how that works. If the Tory takes advantage of the situation, climbs on top of the uke and gets a hold down, and you call osaikomi, well, and it goes to the horn sounds and it's ipan, what do? You forget the Shido. You don't give the Shido. Ipan wins. Shido's moot. You don't need to discuss it anymore. However, let's say something happens like this. The player climbs up on top of the guy, gets him an osaikomi, you call osaikomi, and 10 seconds go by, 11 seconds, and then he gets out, and you go tokeita, and then you go mate, then you give the Shido, because he deserves it at that point. If you understand, that's the current thinking. Now, how about in the case, I'm going to say some very logical things. Wonder if that Shido, that elbow prevent the back going on the ground Shido, is the third one. What does that mean? That means Santokomake. cumulative Hansokomake. What has been recommended, I don't know if the IJ at the Lisbon clinic, they covered this, but what was, what I've heard, which to me sounds very logical, if you have a good referee, judge, supervisor, or what we call in the United States, a mat boss, you know, like the more senior referee that's keeping he's acting as what the IJF calls a mat supervisor. He can override. If it is a third Shido and they drop and their elbows hit, you can call the Wazari, obviously. But then what you want to do is look over to your judges. And if they give you a nod, like a heads up and down, there's only one reason they're doing that if they're on the ball. And that's that's Hansokomake. That's the best way to communicate. Now, if you're not sure, if you're working with a team of people that maybe you're not used to working with, they have the radios. A good judges, both of them, should know right away, that's Hansokomake, that's third Shido, that's Hansokomake, and radio the referee and tell him what he does is Wazari. You can say to him, that's the third Shido, Hansokomake. And then he knows, then he can give it. The reason why you want to look over what happens if it can get very confusing, but that's the best way to do it is look at the judges after you've called it to be sure to give that double elbow thing, because maybe the judges will say, you shouldn't have given that double elbow landing thing. But actually, it seems quite obvious if it's done that way. Unless it can be possible if a player lands just on one elbow or lands on one elbow, and then that elbow comes up and the other elbow goes down, that's not simultaneously, that's not consecutive. That's two different times, and that's okay, according to the IJF. For those who've been around a while, you're not confused. Some new guys, you might say, what? Well, that's the truth. That's the way it is. Now, the second issue is if the Wazari that's gotten by the elbow landing, wonder if that Tori had a Wazari previously. Then it's a Wazari Awasete Ipan, and there's no need to give the Shido. It's over. So those are a couple of different kinds of scenarios you might run into on that elbow landing situation. So to answer Mickey's question with regard to, you should not give it on the fly. Currently, from what I understand, is that if the Tory chooses to take advantage of the situation and climbs up on, and if he gets a hold or not, if the Newaza or Neshise continues to work out and it doesn't go anywhere, then when the referee says mate at a break in the action, that's when you give that Shido for that elbow landing thing. And that could be anywhere from 10 seconds to 40 seconds later or more. I don't know. So just be aware of that. You might hear a different answer about that in the near future, but right now that's the way the thinking that I've heard is on that particular topic. Are there any issues on that? Okay, Ken, let's work on decision 5. This is a very interesting topic.
A question in the chat, Rick, it says, can Uke who puts their elbows down go into Newaza to their advantage?
No. According, at the Lisbon clinic, they say that. Once he's hit, it's a negative, it should be, they'll tell you mate and Shido. If you see Uke trying to take advantage, you're supposed to call mate to stop him from getting any advantage. And that's what they discussed at the Lisbon clinic. Okay.
In 5, no score for counter techniques where the initial attack is rolled to the back towards the counter-attacking or defending judoka. All of these following examples will now receive no score.
Okay, go to freeze it, Ken. Now, when I initially saw this, I said, well, this is going to cause all kinds of problems. For me, it's not clear, but after some discussion with other people and reviewing it, in each of the cases that you saw, and it need not happen in every case, is basically almost every one of those attacks was like an uchimata. And what happens was the Tory had done the throw almost all the way to the ground. And what the uke was doing was basically, Ken mentioned this, and it became obvious, was what was happening is what the uke was trying to do for the counter was to unwind them out of the makikomi, out of the winding. So they pull them up backwards with their hands. Now at the Lisbon clinic, when you watch this, which you can get, you should take the time to look at, is that in each case, what Daniel Lasco said, that particular move with just the hands pulling them and like unpeeling them out of their position, there's no name for that technique in the Kodokan throw list or the IJF's official throw list or technique list. So that in all those cases, when a player does that winding action and he's pulling them out, trying to get them back to his back, that action is not considered a throw. If the player were to use the legs, for instance, uchimata gaeshi, where you're hooking the leg in a tani otosh type action, then you're using the leg and it's a valid throw because it has a name. So with regard to this counter techniques where you're unwinding the guy and bringing him back to his back, they do not want that scored. Okay. Does any, Russ, do you have any comments on that? Have you heard anything different or?
No, I think that sums it up very well.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, next is reverse COA nage, and this is very interesting. Some people thought there'd be problems on this, but at least for me, I believe it's somewhat cleared up, unless I say something completely wrong when I try to explain it. So let's watch it.
Decision 6. No score and Shido for reverse Seoinage. All of these following examples will now receive no score and a Shido. Decisions.
To freeze it, Ken? All right. What the two things that I've come away with this and watching the Lisbon clinic is, in order to give or for reverse Seoinage to occur, is one, you must have a double lapel grip, two hands on one lapel. That's one. There are two things you need to do for it to be reverse Seoinage. If you were, the second thing is to turn in to the wrong side. Now, what I mean by that is, you have to think about this, is that if I have both my hands on my opponent's left lapel, and I turn in counterclockwise, I come in from this side, I'm coming in on the wrong side. If I had a double grip here and I came in on this way, clockwise, and I have a left-handed grip, and I come in left and I'm doing a left-handed turn, that's a normal throw. It's a normal Seoinage, maybe one without any arms, but that's okay. But if you have the double grip on the left lapel and you turn in counterclockwise, you come in this way. And what happens is you scrunch the uke's arm in, and that's the reason why they're making this illegal, is because they believe it's kind of awkward and dangerous from the uke to figure out how to do ukeme. And some of the A referees have said also it might put the arm in jeopardy from a kinsetsu type action. So therefore, reverse seoi nage is double grip if you're on the left lapel and you turn in counterclockwise or anti-clockwise. That's reverse seoi nage. And also, if you grab the lapel on the right side and you turn in clockwise, you come from the outside in, that's also reverse seoi nage. But if you have both hands on the right lapel and you came in counterclockwise, then that would be okay because you're coming in a normal action. Because how many people have I confused? If you can get that concept in your head, then you call this right every time.
Okay, Mickey has a question or a clarification.
I just
Okay,
have
go
a,
ahead.
I just have a quick comment. I was at the Pedro's Challenge recently and somebody made a comment, well, that's an illegal technique. But instead of doing that reverse motion, it is for the lesser experienced referees. They actually did it in more of a kataguruma, that's the same side, kataguruma, same kind of motion. So that wasn't, it's hard to explain without having actually
let me ask-
seen it.
Did they have two hands on the lapel?
It happened so fast. They could have had lapel in the sleeve, but it was more of a kataguruma in the same kind of a lateral motion instead of that turning counter, you know what I mean, counter the actual normal motion.
Let me explain this too. You notice that when the demonstrations of the reverse seoi nage were done in the dojo, they were all to the rear. In other words, the tori spun 180 degrees and threw the guy backwards. But in all the video of during the actual Shiai demonstrations, every single throw was forward throwing. So what direction you throw them has no matter of the decision as whether it's reverse seoi nage. It's how you come in. It's the direction you turn in. If you come in to the wrong side, two lapels on the left lapel of uke, and you turn in counterclockwise, or you put a clock on top of them and you spin against the hands of the clock in, that's reverse seoi nage. That's mate and shido. If you grab a sleeve at any point, if you have a sleeve and a lapel, obviously it's okay. There's a technique called Hantagawano seoi nage. That's inside out or backwards kind of, you're coming in the wrong side, but in those cases you have the sleeve when you're going in. If you have a sleeve when you go in the reverse side, that's not reverse seoi nage. There's a name for that throw. Problem is, it's probably not in the Gokyo, it's not in the Shimei Sho or any of those, but like, you know, the Kodokan and everybody else, it looks like the seoi nage, so it's a seoi nage. They lump it in there. So be aware that if you do the reverse seoi nage, if you have a sleeve grip and a lapel grip on the same side, that's not reverse seoi nage. Double grip one, and then going in the wrong way, depending on which side you're at, is so if you're holding a lapel this way and you turn in, it's illegal. But if you turn normally as you do a left-handed throw, then it's fine. So that's,
Rick,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but we have a couple of questions and one hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Are there documented injuries from reverse Suyanage?
I'm not sure. I don't know the decision to make this illegal is IJF's. I've never heard an exclamation. I've heard the exclamation more of a historical perspective, not a empirical. There's no knowledge of it. I do know that for years, a lot of good players love this throw. And this is just another thrower taken away from them. So there are a lot of peeved people that this is another technique, but I guess they believe that there's a chance that the arm could be trapped and injured in this case, or due to the awkwardness of when you throw them, the uke has no clue what hand to slap. And that's the big joke of how many advanced players do you know that do ukemi? You know, I mean, it's the last resort kind of thing. So I know of no statistics as to the injury. There may be, but
Okay.
I've not been made aware of them.
Okay, and then the next question is that it is presumed that you call mate and then shido when this occurs.
Yes, right. You call mate to prevent, once you see them going in the wrong way. Now, the problem is, this is another like thing we tell people, sometimes a mate in the middle of a throw is more dangerous than just letting it go to fruition and say mate after they go down.
Okay,
So it's up to the referee to understand, would a mate be appropriate in the middle of this thing, or should you wait to call mate and it could, the guy could panic and or whatever, stop. One will stop and the other one won't, and there's a chance for injury there also.
okay,
So the mate happens, have the players stand up after the action ceases, go to their marks, and then the referee will give the this reverse sewenage thing gesture, which will show on the video. That's another new gesture.
okay.
And then you get the shido. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jim.
now does the shido come for only a completed throw or even a weak attempt at a reverse suoi?
Anytime, even a weak attempt.
Anytime.
Yeah, if he grabs the double lapel and spins in the wrong side, as he spin mate, stop it right there if you can, because it's going to be illegal.
Okay, and also a one-hand lapel reverse suoi is also illegal, correct? If the guy only has,
I haven't heard that.
okay,
Russ, have you heard that? Are there any other A's on the line? I don't have a full.
I have not seen that discussed.
okay,
I will
And-
say this. Coaches we've always said that one-handed throws, you're not going to get anywhere with it. You can, but then I see people do one-handed throws and they throw people. So, but most
Right.
of the time they don't, they hurt them. There's some throws, we discourage, coaches should discourage players from doing this reverse sewenage, but also should discourage, like diving, should discourage one-handed throwing.
Right. Derek Kerr has his hand raised. I'm
Say that
sorry.
again.
Derek Kerr has his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sensei, it's just a quick question, taking you back to what Ms. Takamori had brought about. So the differentiation of what we're looking at is it on the sleeves or is it on the lapel? Because yes, what she stated about the the entry into what would look like a kataguruma, if we're executing off of the lapel or off of the sleeve, I guess that's the little area that is not quite clear to me based on what you were saying. So at what point, if we come off a sleeve or off the lapel, does it matter to say that's the determination for reverse seonagi, or are we looking, again, at the direction? So, just if you can help me just to better understand it. I understand the technique, I understand the throw, but the point that Ms. Takamori brought up, Yeah, because for me as a coach or even as a referee, I teach that off of a sleeve. So I'm a little bit lost as to what the differentiation is that makes it an illegal entry.
Since we don't have, like at the IGF thing, they tell a guy who, I'd actually get on the mat and throw some and show me what you're talking about. But since we don't have that, all I could tell you is if the player grabs both hands on the lapel and he goes in for an attack and continues to hold that lapel with both hands, that's reverse seoi nage. Now, he may come in, you know, if he may come in with both hands and maybe as he's coming in, as he's turning in, if he lets one goes and goes in for an ipan arm for a seoi nage, wow, that's not reverse seoi nage anymore. So,
And so like you said, the direction is not what we're focusing on. It's that grip and the entry and the execution.
yeah, it's right. It's not the direction where the uke falls, whether it's backwards or forwards or side, doesn't matter. It's double grip is the first criteria.
Correct.
And the second criteria is an entry from the wrong side. So, and when I hear people say that, I'm confused. So I thought of clockwise and counter. If you can understand the clock, if you have put a clock on top of somebody and draw the clock and 12 o'clock is in front of you, if you turn in anti-clockwise or counterclockwise with lapels on that lapel, your hikite,
Understood.
your pulling hand and the lifting hand, if both those hands are on that one lapel and you turn in this way, reverse seoi nage. And as I mentioned, if you're holding the uke's left lapel and you go in clockwise, that's a normal left-handed. So you can allow that action to continue even with the double lapel.
Understood. Okay.
You know, Alberto
Okay.
has his hand up. Alberto,
Hey, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Hey, how you doing, Rick?
How you
I
doing?
actually think that you just covered what I was going to mention. The rule, and these are just comments that I have picked up from my friends that have been refereeing and in IGF seminars recently. You know, we are specifically talking about the reverse seoi nage with the double hand on the lapel of the same grip side. So it's specifically talking about the option and the fact that by turning backwards, or how you just described that towards the 12 on the clock, you know, the hand of the uke is on that same grip side, and it may go into a kind of udegarami twisted, you know, when the tori executes the technique, you know.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Thank you very much, Alberto.
Yeah.
By the
yeah.
way, for those that don't know, Alberto is an IGF-A referee. He's in Massachusetts right now. Okay, next, let's see. If there's no other questions on this, I hope I've explained it or somewhat clarified it. I even have a better understanding of it now, I think. And this is somewhat what they explained at the Lisbon clinic also. Because the one question I had was if you have a double grip and you go in normal, but there's an actual case where it occurs and Daniel Laskow says, yes, you can do that. So that I checked that off my list. I go, oh, good. Covered something that actually got covered, and it didn't take 5 years to figure out the right answer. Okay, next is, oh, wait a minute.
Under the belt,
Okay, that's it. Go ahead. Number 7.
in the end phase of a throwing technique is allowed if the opponent is already in newaza. If the throwing technique is interrupted, gripping under the belt is a newaza action. This example, the action is not affected by touching the leg, so the score will be given. In this competition example, we can see that the action is continuous and that the hand only touches the leg in the end phase of the technique. So score will be given. If there is a stop in the action, then it's classed as newaza. So you're allowed to take the leg. Here we can see two different actions and then the newaza roll. So in this competition example, we can see that there is a break in the action and so classed as newaza. Decision 8.
Freeze it, Ken. Thank you. Now, in this particular case, we must look at the leg grabbing thing. Something, it's interesting, it actually came up at the clinic, the Lisbon clinic, and when I originally thought that, I like to make models to make things a little easier to understand. So as far as this one goes, you have, when this action is done, or when you grab the leg, you have initial part of the attack, an initial phase, a middle phase, and an end phase. They're saying any touching of the leg during the end phase of an action is allowable because the throw has already been done, the launching and the flight. And this is just at the end being able to get in a position for a newaza situation. If the player were to touch the leg, to block the leg, to grab the pants in the initial phase, that would obviously be Shido. And what throws would be in that category? And obviously it would be like Burote Gari, Kibisu Gaishi, the ankle picking throw, which we can't do. Kata Ashidori, which is a single leg takedown, like what's it, Kuchiki Tayoshi, or dead tree drop. Those are where you push the guys, you grab their ankle, cross ankle, and then push their chest and then stack them up and put them on their back. We can't do any of those throws anymore. And in each of those, the leg grab it's not assisting the throw, it's initiating the throw, or it's in the initial stage. But also you have cases where the player might come in, like the Kosoto Ko Uchigake, where they go under the arm and they put their hand on the thigh. But sometimes you'll see them, they'll try to put two hands on the sleeve, and they'll go in underneath. And as they're pushing, the player doesn't go down, and they end up actually not thinking, but they let this hand go and put it on the thigh and try to finish them. That's a middle phase of the throw. In other words, that hand actually assisted in making that throw possible. That's Shido. But any time that the hand is used after the throw is the uke is completely off balance, or in the middle of flight, or at near the end of the flight of being thrown over, and the leg touches, that's what they mean by end phase. So it shouldn't be too complicated, except if you watch the Lisbon clinic, a couple of the guys in the room said that the contact was end phase, and it wasn't. It was in the middle. In one case, it was in the initial phase. So please be aware, the uke has to be completely off balance and actually should be in flight for the leg to touch, and that it not get any penalty for it. If there's no questions on that, let us move to number 8.
Collar and lapel grips are allowed if not negative. As long as Tori is not deemed as being negative, but trying to throw their opponent, then they won't be penalized for this lapel and collar grip. Decision 9.
And freeze. All right. They're calling it lapel and collar grip. In the US, we call this crushing, or have for the last, since it's been around. And it's always been around. I mean, even back when I was refereeing in the 60s, we had crushing, 70s, 80s. And that's basically you take and put your hand behind the neck on the collar, and then on the other hand, you pull them down to a 90 degrees so they can't do anything. It's okay to take that grip if you use it offensively, if you drag the player in and then try to come in for a throw. But if you hold it negatively, it's almost like an unconventional grip situation where if you don't attack within a certain time period, that and you're just keeping the other player neutralized, that's negative judo, and therefore you should call mate and give the player who's crushing the penalty. But be very careful with this, because in some instances we've seen someone might have a high collar grip, but it's the player that's underneath that's being crushed that's actually adopting a negative, like a poor posture. And he's stiff arming and he's got a poor posture. So be sure you're penalizing the right guy. Generally, when someone grabs this grip, you shouldn't call it right away. You got to see if they positively use the grip to enter into a throw. So don't be so too quick in giving this. The old adage, well, let's see if we cover that. Let's see. Okay, now that's one of the next few. So does anybody have questions or comments on this?
Alberto has his hand up.
All right, Alberto, go ahead.
For distinguishing the position of this grip from the crushing position to the positive position, it's very important to observe the elbows, the location of the elbows for Tori in this case, because during the crushing position, there is a tendency for the Tori to put the elbow pointing down towards the chest of the uke, while when it's in an active position for a throw, the elbows are usually up. That doesn't mean that is the only sign that the referee should be careful about, but this is one of the tricky parts that referees needs to work with with their own experience with identifying the position at one point or moment. If this particular grip is close around the neck of the uke, in this case, it may perfectly be a point of blocking the other guy or crushing the other guy to avoid him doing anything and make it look, it's the tricky part, identifying what the elbows and hands of the Tori are doing with that particular position. The samples that are given by the IGF are, I would say, perfect samples, because you could see how active the Tori is into attacking, not just faking attacks, but doing actual ouchigaris and move towards throwing, instead of just using this grip to avoid the other one from attacking. But I wanted to give you that particular thing, because I definitely think that the elbows, if you follow the elbows of the Tori, where the position is against the body of the uke, it will be a fairly good indication whether his intention is to block the other or to attack.
All right, thank you very much. That's true. That what he said seems to be very logical, that if the player's pulling down. One sign that definitely it's crushing is if he's got a sleeve grip and he's got the hand or back of your collar, and he's not only crushing you this way, but he's taking your wrist and pulling it to the ground. He's pulled you completely down. He's got the wrist grip or the sleeve grip, and he's pulling down, and he's got the collar on top of your neck, keeping you at a 90-degree angle. All right. Just for coaches, you need to tell your players, though, too, also, is that if you're ever in this position, you should tell your players that are in the bad position in this to at least look like you're trying to straighten up, so you don't get a negative judo penalty. But the other thing is the player who's doing the crushing is hoping you do straighten up. So that's when he'll come in and get you. You have to be very careful about that. All right, now let's move on to number 9, decision 9.
Belt grip, one side grip, cross grip, pistol grip, and pocket grip are not traditional grips. If taken, time will be allowed for the preparation of an attack.
Okay, can we freeze it? I think most of you have heard of all these kinds of grips. Anything that's not conventional, those are the most common ones. One that they leave out is like the single hand grip where you're only holding on with one hand. That's also an unconventional grip. Now, what has changed on this is that there are 2 things. One is they said if you've got an unconventional grip, you must attack immediately. That's the words they used the last 4 years or 5 years. Now they want you to give the player more time to make something of that grip. If this unconventional grip is taken and they're using it positively to set the player up, then you're supposed to allow it to continue. Now, they haven't stated a time frame, but IGF, they don't like time, it seems. Immediately was not, if you, let's say, literally take the word, what immediately means, that's not what they meant, because if they did that, then some of these players would get Hatsogomake within the first 2 minutes of a match. And that's a fact. So what they meant by immediately, and this is my opinion, is like about 5 seconds. Because what was happening was players were using these unconventional grips and referees wouldn't stop these unconventional grips with no attack for 10 and 20 seconds. That looked terrible. If you have a normal conventional grip, you can go on as long as the action's positive for 10 to 20 to 30, up to 45 seconds. But with unconventional grips, it's no longer, it's not 5 seconds anymore. It could be up to 10 seconds, 6 to 8 seconds, 10 seconds, a little time. What I advise you to do is to watch your local, the way your local referees are doing it, or ask your local referee authority, whoever's the A or B or national or C referee in your area, if this ever comes up, what type of time frame do we use for now for the unconventional grips? The other thing too is that the catch ball grip was only illegal if it was done at the end of the sleeve. If you did a catch ball grip at mid sleeve or at the elbow, or you did a pistol grip at the elbow or mid sleeve, that's okay. It's when you did it at the edge of the sleeve, right at the edge of the sleeve, and you did your pistol grip, top, bottom, side, it didn't matter. Those used to be illegal right away. As soon as you grabbed it, you got a penalty. But then as the years went on, they got a little more lenient. And if you grabbed it and you did a throw right away, then they let it go. We didn't see that. Now they're letting you grab it and giving you 6 to 8, 9 seconds to do something with it, just like all the other, the 2 double lapel grip, sleeve grip, the belt grip, all those kind of different kinds of unconventional grips. So be aware, you can take that now 6 to 8 seconds, maybe longer. We'll have to watch, you need to watch the IGF videos on the Upon TV and at the IJF site to see how they're doing it internationally. Let me tell you though, the way they referee and giving penalties at the IGF level may be a little different than at the local and regional level. They're a little more lenient at the higher level because they're told these people are the best in the world, let them play. At local and regional, we want to make sure that any athletes that we train both coaches and referees at tournaments, that they understand the rules as they're somewhat literally written, so that they don't end up going to an international event and keep a grip on too long and lose a match because of something silly, like keeping a grip on too long. So we need to be a little more diligent with the way we give the penalties at the local and regional thing. It's not the same. We cannot apply some IGF rules at the local and regional event. I mean, we have in writing in some instances, for instance, choking. We don't let 9-year-olds choke each other out. We don't let 12-year-olds choke each other out. Even up to, like junior 16-year-olds. Yet, if they're in a cadet class, they can choke at 16, at 15. And maybe if you're, they don't use, I've seen cases where it could be a 14-year-old that can choke because their birthday on the day of the tournament, I've seen it happen. So but that's only in cadet divisions. If you're fighting junior divisions, most local tournaments do not allow juniors to do Kensetsuwas, arm locks. With chokes, it's 13 and up. So 12 and under, you're not allowed to choke. So just understand with regard to these unconventional grips, the timing is now changed. It's from 5 seconds to 6 to 8 seconds, maybe a little longer. Russ, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think that the key thing that the referee should keep in mind is if you give that longer time frame, you should have made an assessment that they're using that in a positive mode. If they grip unconventionally and it's obvious right from the very beginning, they lock them out. You don't give them time to move around and give them 8 seconds to turn it from a negative into a positive. They have to show some sort of a positive attitude pretty much from the beginning. I think that's a key thing that as a referee you have to assess. So if they're taking a double sleeve ends and they're just jamming their fists down to the mat, that's not a positive judo activity. And if it's not positive judo that you're anticipating, then that should be penalized much quicker. Not the
I
extent.
agree. Right. If it's obvious they're very negative, you could go a little faster.
Right.
You don't have to 10 seconds. That just makes judo look terrible. Thanks a lot, Russ. All right, next decision 11.
Breaking the grips and immediately taking grips is allowed. Breaking grips and not taking a grip immediately is Shido. In this example, Tori immediately breaks the grip, but then tries to take the grip, and that is allowed. In these two examples, we can clearly see they're breaking grips and not trying to retake them. Therefore, Shido will be given. Decision 11.
Yeah, pause. All right, that is a change. The big thing we were working out was you can break the grips, except for that two-handed grip where you use both hands to break a grip. Now that any grip you break, if you don't immediately try to re-grip, you can give a penalty. You should give a penalty. Even this double, if you break a grip, you have two hands on the collar grip and you break it off, then you can go right in. You can keep one hand on there, like for Sode, grab the sleeve or something, and then throw them with Sode Tsurukami Goshi or whatever. You're allowed to do the two-hand grip break or any of the grip breaks, but as long as you try to re-grip after. If you don't re-grip, as those examples were very clear, then those are mate and shido. Okay? Let's go to...
Retying and arranging judogi and hair is allowed once per judoka per contest. Further occasions are penalized with Shido. The first time will be allowed. Any time after that, Shido will be given. The first time will be allowed. Any time after that, Shido will be given.
Okay, freeze, pause it. Heiko asked, I saw that Heiko's question. Yeah, the two-handed grip break is legal now. It's legal as long as you follow it up with an attack. You break it and you go right into something. Okay, or you don't have to go right in. You could break it, but don't break completely. Go break it and then keep it and drag the guy in. Do some kind of setup for something. But if you break it and just completely let go and back off, Shido, mate, Shido, and that goes for all the other grip breaking. Heiko, did that answer it for you? Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Ken has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm on this with respect to the hair readjustments. I mean, I've noted over the years that particularly young women with long hair, when they're engaged in mat work, their hair ends up all over the place and their scrunchies come out. Are you saying that they get one iteration where they can put the scrunchie back in again, and then what? We're penalizing them for the hair coming loose in legitimate positive judo action?
I didn't get to that point yet.
Well, that's what we just saw.
Okay, no. Right. What I'm trying to say is the rule states that if the athlete undoes their belt or dresses on their own, it's athlete initiated, they have one chance. And then they will be penalized for it. However, if the referee sees that the hair is down or the belt is loose and he says mate and indicates to the player dress, you could do that as many times as you want during a match, but you'll get yelled at if you do it too much. You know, the last thing they're doing, you know, in my day when I played, they wanted everybody neat, you know, tidied up. So they were giving these breaks too much. Now they'll yell at, if both guys are disheveled the same, you know, each has one lapel out of the belt, but the other lapel's in, and the belt's on tight, they let them continue to fight. They don't break it up, they let it go. However, if one guy's got both lapels out, the whole jacket's out, and the other guy's nice and neat, well, that's not fair now. It's the guy that's got the neat jacket, it's gonna be easier to throw. So then appropriate referee says mate and dress. If it's referee initiated, as many as needed. Player initiated, one free one. And if he does it again, now the other thing they don't mention here, and I had the question about, was previously about a couple of years ago, they said that when the referee was to say mate, it was okay for the player when he was walking back to his mark or his start position, since we don't have any marks anymore. As he's walking back, it was okay to push in the gi, tighten the belt, but the girls or boys with long hair could tie their hair back and tighten it up. As long as you do that fixing up, so when you get to that start mark, you're ready to go, they can do it. But if you get, like in the cases here, where a player removes his belt and when he gets to the mark, he takes another 20 seconds to tie that belt up on the mark, that's penalty. Because in most cases, we see That's a ploy to get a rest in most cases, or just ignorance of the rule. Alberto, you had a question. You had your hand up?
Yes, actually, I don't have a question. I have a comment based on what you said before, or what is should be the aptitude or the procedure by the coaches to train their local players towards international or more demanding tournaments. And in this particular case, when a person has long hair, regardless of whether it's women or male, the hair should be right now tied up to above the color, so it cannot be touching the color. So that kind of preparation of the hair requires a little bit more demanding procedure than just using a rubber band. So that being said, if we are training a player towards a tournament and we want to prevent a potential issue with a Shido due to that thing, what we should do is advise them to tie their hair the most and the better possible to be truly prepared for a competition that will be applying all of the rules. And also notice that when the IGF video is specifically mentioned the situation of losing out the belt, but what's happening right now is that the players in the international field, they know they have to keep their jackets tucked in and fit for playing. And so because of that, they were using the excuse to untighten the belt just because my gi is not correct. So what we're trying to limit right now is that they use that particular procedure the same way that a hair could be used to just cool down the time or cool down the fight to the point that they want. So in best cases, for us as coaches or local referees, local coaches, we should always keep advising the players that they need to keep their jackets fit, the gis, ready for competition, and the hair type correctly since the beginning of the tournament and not interrupting for the beginning for the whole fight and not interrupting the fight towards doing this kind of things.
All right, thank you very much.
We have,
one thing, what's
we
that?
have, John has raised his hand.
That's actually me, Rick, not John. Last weekend, we were talking to the coaches after the tournament, and I suggested to them that what Ralph and I teach our students, when you get up from the ground, automatically put your uniform back together, and you won't have to worry about a Shido for that. And they agreed.
Yes, as long as you finished it before you get to the start position. That's fine. That's a good judoka, good player. Now, let me explain too, is for all of you coaches, if you go to the YouTube and look up like Ronda Rousey's hair tying tutorial, and she'll show you how to tie your hair up for combat judo. And they put it in a bun, and if you have real long hair, they put it in, you'll make you have Princess Leia with two buns. There are some other people who if you're in a contact sport and women are involved, there are ways to tie the hair up that they won't come out. If you were run over by a bulldozer, the hair will still be there. So that you check those out. They're very interesting. They don't cause you a headache. And the band, they do use elastic band, but it's not the way it is now. Remember, the old rule was to tie the hair back. The new rule for the last 6 to 8 years is to tie the hair up. It's got to be, like Alberto said, off the collar. Because we used to say, boy or girl, if your hair touched the collar and a player came in and did a high collar grip on your collar and grabbed some hair, too bad for you with the long hair. You're going to get tossed and it's okay. All right, the last thing here before we get to the gestures, so we're going to go over a few minutes, is head diving. I thought this hadn't changed, but it really has. If you throw, you're going for a throw, it's Tori, and your head goes down and it touches the mat not only between your legs or in front of your body, but if it touches over to the right or left, or if it almost touches, it doesn't even have to touch. If you go over the top of your head where your body weight, here's the head, this part here. If the head hits the mat and all of this body weight of the tori is coming down on top of the neck, which is the weakest point in the body. And if uke's on top of them, that's another 100+ pounds coming down on the neck. You're going to finish the person off. The IJF, the EJU, USA Judo, USJA, USJF, we all don't want to see an injury from such a technique. We must tell the players not to do these types of diving techniques. Ken, if you could go to 3 hours, 2 minutes and 48 seconds.
3:2:48. Okay, 3:2.
While he's doing that, I just want to remember also with regard to head defense. With head defense, something right now, we were told the last time I was briefed on this was that if the head and the shoulder were to contact together in a head defense, that you would call it. But from what I see from the IJF Lisbon or the EJU Lisbon clinic with Daniel Laskow and the EJU commission, that if the player just does a head defense, which means they use their head to like a post and then they spin out of a throw or spin out of being thrown to the back, that's a head defense. If the head and shoulder hit simultaneously, the shoulder nulls the penalty. It's no longer a penalty. So it seems that the head alone is the thing that has to hit. The other thing person asked me or confused, what's the difference between a bridge and a head defense? Well, a bridge is where a player remains with their back to the ground. They're thrown and they arch their neck and they arch their back and they land on their head, the back of their head, and either 1 foot or both feet, and their back remains facing the ground but not touching. That's a bridge. And that in that case, the referee goes ippon and sorimare. However, if the player is thrown and their head hits, whether it's the front of the head, the side of the head, doesn't matter, and he does like a spin out, he turns his body like a cat and ends up in like a front bridge position, or ends on his side or on his feet. If he spins out, that's a head defense. That's the difference. With a pure bridge, it's ippon. With a head defense, it is mate. Look at your judges, get their approval and the supervisor on your mat to give hansogomake for diving. And of course, that's one of the penalty. Head diving and head defense are two of the ones that a player can come back if the pool sheets allow it. Okay, go ahead, Ken. Watch this, please.
Yes, please.
I think he's not really control and not score.
No score.
Could you freeze it,
Someone
Ken?
have another.
Interestingly, this throw, if you're probably not looking at it, I do, is that it actually wasn't under the diving category. It was under the score, no score, counter rolling. So everybody in the audience thinks they're supposed to judge whether this is a score or no score. They don't see the dive, which is interesting. As a good referee, you've got to see the dive every time. All right, continue, Ken, please.
Yeah, please raise your hand. Yes, please. You want? You want to see again?
Raise your hand, please.
No, he said he want to see again. Please. Please give your comment.
Only jumping.
Jumping?
Yes.
Yes.
Not technique. Not technique.
Yes. And
As opinion?
other opinion about it? Please, raise your hand. Diving. Okay. How many people are in favor of diving?
Not so many, eh? Not so many. Please, Mark. Look. The blue one go directly on the head. He lose also the grip.
Stop the picture, Mike.
Here,
Stop.
directly,
Go.
as before Mr. Lascaux said, look.
Stop. Stop. Is no diving? He's diving, no? Hey,
Yes.
sorry, no kumikata, no. The neck is the weakest part of our body, very weak, you know. Now it is the weight of blue plus the weight of white on here on the neck. Okay, so we have to stop this, especially on this level. They are children. Can you agree with diving? Okay, so this is no judo.
And,
This is dangerous, no?
And of course, we concentrate now on this rolling to the back. Maybe you have too much concentrated on that.
Yeah.
But you should not forget, this is a clear diving situation, even if it's not in the group we expect.
And I hope that's very obvious to everybody that that is absolutely 100% diving. And it seems the majority of the room there didn't even see it. Lastly, Ken, can you put up the video on the hand gesture? And while we're doing that, while he's setting that up, the last thing I want to explain before we go to this, if you freeze it, is that there are some changes to the sporting code and so forth. One thing I'd like to make you aware of is the medical changes at the IGF level. One is, I think if you know the rules, you're allowed to, if a wound is bleeding, you're allowed it to be patched up twice per site, wherever it is, like the fingernail or the bloody nose or whatever. You can do it twice per bleeding wound. What they're saying is now that if a bleeding site opens up a third time, that the medical commission or the IGF commission will allow a doctor to attend to it if they so deem it necessary. Since we don't have that mechanism in the US, I suspect, I don't know if the US Judo Commission has covered this particular case. I'll ask about that in a moment. I want to get to the other one. That particular one is too difficult to apply. If we just stay with 2 bleeding per site, that's the way. The other one that did change is if you dislocate your finger at the IGF level, it's okay for the player himself to take his finger and relocate it back into place and then continue fighting. You can't add tape, but you could continue fighting. Well, the IGF finally decided, well, that's a little barbaric. So at the IGF level now, if you dislocate your finger or a toe, you are allowed to, the referee's allowed to bring the physician onto the mat and he can reduce it and tape it, and then the match can continue. Now, Ross, has the referee commission discussed those? Are they approved for the US, or that's on the agenda for the next?
No, actually, last night we discussed it and we've adopted the additional IGF rule changes, including those medical issues. So, and the thing will be that for the third bleeding, that it's not an automatic. It's an assessment, and as was stated, usually that probably is going to happen right near the end of the match. It's there are other things that it will be implied.
Who decides for that third thing? Who's
okay? The medical staff, and hopefully, if you have a second medical opinion, there, those two should agree.
Okay. All right.
But it is a medical decision.
Okay. Thank you very much. The last thing we're going to do is
Rick,
someone have a question.
Yeah, there's a clarification. Gentleman asks, so if you have two different bleeding sites, you get 2 opportunities per site to correct the problem.
Yes,
So the answer to your question is yes, Ralph. Thank you. Rick.
yes. And to be, that you can't, that stuff we talked about in the old days, Russ and I and some of the old timers, but the question came up, well, if I bleed out of this nostril and then I bleed out of this nostril, are those 2 different sites? No, the nose is one site. It doesn't matter what nostril. Just any of you are thinking about asking that question. We took care of that. All right,
Thank you for the clarification.
all right. All right, this is about 2 minutes long, and then there will be an end. Go ahead, Ken.
Stop. Stop.
Well, the voice is off on it, obviously. You do the gesture and then you point and say the command Shido at the same time.
Stop. Stop.
And this is reverse Sewenage gesture.
Stop. Stop.
Okay. That gesture is used when there's a second player initiated attempt to readjust their judo game. You do that, then point to the player. Are there any, I know that if you have questions, sorry, we're really went over about 15 minutes. And Rob is looking at me like, it's not going to record. So we're going to lose this clinic will be recorded and edited and then placed on YouTube. If you want to go through anything or if you want to forward it to anybody. I hope this helped some of you, most of you. It may be repetitive for some of you. But I'm doing this to try to bring across, some of you don't get the latest words. We will try to make available to you the Lisbon clinic, both days, and the SOR link. You can check that yourself, as I said, by going to IGF site under referee commission documents. And with regard to the Lisbon thing, just go to YouTube and put in 2022 Lisbon IGF referee clinic or some combination of that, and you should be able to get those too. So if there's no further ado, I want to thank everybody very, very much and appreciate your participation. I'd
Rick,
like go ahead.
I just wanted to tell you there are numerous thank yous in the chat room. People have found this very informative and very helpful. So thank you, Rick, very much.
Thank you very, very, thank you, Mickey. I see you clapping there. Could I just ask the host to remain for a post-logistical review and analysis? Goodbye, everybody. Have a good night. Heiko, good seeing you.
Thank you all very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Get some rest.
Fred, good seeing you. Okay. I hope that recorded, Rob. I mean, I know it probably went over and you have a limit to the amount of space.
Yeah, we're good. We
Good.
we
And
had a
if any-
2-hour one before and that was okay.
If you guys have any comments about Any feedback for me?
Oh, I think it was excellent. I have a dilemma here. There's Tom J has entered the waiting room.
Yeah.
What do I do with that?
Ken, thank you very much. You were very quick on the draw. You
You're
brought
welcome.
everything up. I think the load factor was much faster than the time that it took almost 8 seconds to load something up. That wasn't your fault. It was the machine's fault. I think the video that I was watching was pretty clear. Did everybody have a clear video?
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything I
the
saw
voice
was very good. I think the
That's-
fellow in the waiting room's in a different time zone and it got it. It always, there's usually somebody who will get the time zone in the wrong wrong direction.
So
Shall
should
we
I
just, there's
tell him-
there's a spot to just not admit them. Shall we just do that?
Yeah,
Well,
you can undo.
or tell him that he's in the wrong time zone
Yeah,
and that it's over?
All right, here.
Well, I'll admit them and then we can tell them.
Yeah,
I don't report. I removed him. Oh, who is this
I just
guy?
let them in.
yeah.
but he's in.
Oh,
Tom, unfortunately, you're at the end of the program and it has finished.
hello, is Tom J there?
Yeah, I just unmuting him. Or he's,
All right.
yeah,
All right, the clinic was between 6 and 7:30 Eastern time. So I'm sorry to say it's over.
No problem. Thank you anyway. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
will-
That was very good.
Have a good night.
This
All right.
will be posted, Tom. It has been recorded and it will be posted.
All
So
right.
you'll be able to see it.
All right. Thank you. All right.
welcome.
Have a nice day. Bye.
yeah, you too.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted, if there any feedback for next time.
I don't know why, but on the Neil Adams' voice was out of sync with everything, but that's probably the way that happened on the show.
Yeah, I will try to work on that because you weren't getting any audio and I put optimize for audio, which usually
Right.
should take care of that and it didn't. So I
Right.
had to turn on my audio
Right.
and it was showing my audio and then sending my audio. So there was a lag. So I'll try to
Okay.
figure out how to deal with that for next time.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm glad-
One issue, I had asked you to pause and you didn't hear it.
Ah,
And so-
Yeah, I thought I heard one time where it was crackly and I couldn't hear you. So
Yeah. But overall, it was very smooth and very clear what they were trying to say.
I hope so, because I'll tell you, a week ago, I had no clue what the hell was going on. Even though I watched the video, but this Lisbon clinic was a clarifier. And I only saw the first few of them. And I was just relying hopefully on Russ or Ken, well, even Ken just barely got it. We got it, so. But I think, I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yes,
I
they
was,
did.
I was
Thanks a lot.
listening, Rick, on what we had talked about and making sure, and, on the reverse SAO, at first you hadn't mentioned the different directions, but then you did and clarified it, and, yeah, it went excellent. I think so.
Okay, good.
It's a
Jen, I
good
want to
thing
thank,
the rules aren't too complicated.
I know, I agree. You
They're
need a
very
PhD.
granular.
You need a PhD. I don't understand how they can't have judo people being referees. We've been thrown on our heads so much.
That's right.